I'm standing here in the house that used to echo with laughter and life. Now it's just silent. Painfully, devastatingly silent. 3 months have passed since any of them bothered to call me. Not on my birthday in September, not during the holidays, not even a simple text to say hello. The quiet has become so loud it's almost unbearable. But what makes my chest ache the most is that I understand exactly why they've vanished from my life. I stopped being their personal checkbook. My name is Helen, I'm 70 years old, and I'm telling you this story from a place my children will never discover. That's exactly how I want it, and before I reveal what I did with the property they were all counting on, let me tell you how I got here. This whole thing really began 6 years ago when I lost my husband David. We'd been married for 41 years. 41 years of building a life together, raising a family, working toward something stable. He was dependable, hardworking, the kind of man who never missed a day providing for us. When he passed, he left me in a decent position. Not wealthy by any means, but comfortable. The house was paid off completely, worth somewhere around $750,000. There was his life insurance policy, his retirement benefits, and combined with my Social Security, I had more than enough to live well for whatever years I had left. We have 3 kids together. Robert is 47 now, the eldest. Then there's Sarah at 44, and the baby of the family, James, who just turned 41. Between the 3 of them, I've got 8 grandchildren. For so many years I genuinely believed I'd done right by them as a mother. I sacrificed everything, supported every dream, celebrated every achievement with them. David and I put all 3 through university. We helped them with down payments when they bought their first homes. We were there through every crisis, every milestone, every moment they needed us. But after David died, something changed. Something I didn't recognize at first. Initially I thought they were just trying to help their grieving mother. Robert suggested I should sell the house, said it was too big for one person, too much maintenance for a woman my age to handle alone. Sarah started taking over my financial paperwork, told me not to worry myself about all those complicated numbers and statements. James moved his family to a neighborhood closer to mine, claimed he wanted to keep a better eye on me, make sure I was okay. I was drowning in grief, desperately lonely, and so grateful that they seemed to care. I couldn't see the trap being set until I was already caught in it. It started small, almost innocuous. Robert's business hit some rough waters. Could I help with his mortgage payment for just a couple of months until things stabilized? Sarah's son needed orthodontic work, and with 4 kids their budget was stretched thin. Could I cover the cost? James's vehicle broke down and he needed reliable transportation for his job. Just a loan, Mom, we'll pay you back as soon as possible. Every single time I said yes. What kind of mother wouldn't? These were my babies, the children I'd raised and loved, and they needed help. David would have done the same thing, I was certain of it. So I wrote the checks, covered the expenses, became their safety net, their backup plan, their endless source of emergency funding. Except the emergencies never actually stopped. And the promised repayments never materialized. So gradually, so slowly that I barely noticed it happening, I stopped being their mother and transformed into something else entirely. An ATM machine that happened to share their DNA. The requests became relentless, constant. Sarah needed money for her children's private school fees. Robert's business required cash injections to stay operational. James wanted to finish his basement. Then there were birthdays, holidays, unexpected expenses that somehow always landed on my doorstep. One night when sleep wouldn't come, I sat down and calculated everything. Over the course of 5 years, I'd given them nearly $280,000. $280,000 that David and I had worked our entire lives to save, to protect, to ensure our security. But here's what really shattered something inside me. They stopped asking, they started demanding. They expected it as their right. Sarah would call and inform me she'd already enrolled her kids in an expensive summer program and needed $4,000 by the end of the week. Robert would text me his mortgage amount with a reminder about the due date. James stopped even pretending these were loans at all. I began having nightmares about running out of money, about being destitute. I wasn't just living off the interest anymore. I was digging into the principal, the foundation of my security. My financial advisor, a kind gentleman named Frank who'd worked with David for years, sat me down one afternoon and showed me projections that made my blood run cold. At this rate, Barbara, excuse me, Helen, he said gently, you'll have nothing left in 7 years. You'll be 77 years old with no money and no options. Frank's voice was soft but firm. Your children are grown adults. They need to solve their own financial problems. You can't keep doing this to yourself. I knew he was absolutely right. God knows I knew it. But telling your children no, even when they're middle-aged, even when they're draining you dry, is one of the hardest things any mother can do. I loved them so much. I wanted them to be happy, secure, successful. Isn't that what mothers are supposed to want? It took me 4 months to gather the courage. 4 months of sleepless nights, of anxiety that made my hands shake, of practicing speeches in front of the bathroom mirror. Finally, I called a family meeting. I made a nice dinner, set the table with our good dishes, and waited nervously for them to arrive. Only Robert showed up on time. Sarah was nearly an hour late with some excuse about traffic. James sent a text saying he couldn't make it, but whatever I needed to tell him, I could just say over the phone. That should have told me everything I needed to know about how much I actually mattered to them. I'd prepared this whole speech in my head. I was going to explain the financial situation, the projections, how I needed to protect my future. I'd planned to be gentle but firm, loving but clear. I'd even written notes on little cards tucked in my sweater pocket. But when I finally opened my mouth, what came out was much simpler. Much more direct. I can't keep giving you money. I'm sorry, but I just can't do it anymore. The silence that followed felt like a physical weight pressing down on the room. Robert slowly put down his fork. Sarah's expression went completely blank, frozen. Through the speakerphone, I heard James's sharp intake of breath. What do you mean you can't? Sarah asked, and there was an edge in her voice I'd never heard before. Cold, hard, like I was a stranger who'd just insulted her. I mean exactly what I said, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the trembling. I've been going through my savings too quickly. If I continue like this, I won't have anything left for my own future, for my own care if something happens. Robert leaned back in his chair, his face unreadable. Mom, you have plenty of money. Dad left you very comfortable. You're living alone in a house worth $750,000. You're being overdramatic. I'm being realistic, I countered, pulling out the papers Frank had given me. Look at these numbers. Look at how much I've given you all over the past 5 years. It's not sustainable. It's not possible to continue. Sarah practically snatched the papers from my hands, her perfectly manicured nails flashing. She barely glanced at them before tossing them back onto the table with disdain. These numbers are wrong. You're letting that advisor manipulate you. He probably wants you to invest more with him or something, wants his commission. Frank has been nothing but honest with me, I said, feeling heat rising in my face. And these numbers aren't wrong. I have all the bank statements to prove every single dollar. James's voice crackled through the phone speaker, sharp and accusatory. So what exactly are you saying, Mom? That you're just cutting us off completely after everything we do for you? That stopped me cold, actually made me pause. Everything you do for me? What exactly do you do for me? Are you serious right now? Sarah's voice rose, getting louder. I manage your finances. I make sure you're not getting scammed by anyone. I check on you constantly. You manage my finances so you know exactly how much I have left to take, I said, and I watched her face flush deep red. And you don't check on me. You check on my bank account balance. Robert stood up abruptly, his chair scraping hard against the hardwood floor. This is unbelievable. We're your children, Mom. Family helps family. That's what Dad would have wanted. That's what he would have done. Don't you dare tell me what your father would have wanted, I said, and my voice came out stronger than I'd heard it in years, maybe decades. David worked himself to complete exhaustion to provide for this family. He saved every single penny so we could have security in our retirement years. He didn't do that so you could drain it all away and leave me with absolutely nothing. The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Sarah grabbed her purse, her movements sharp and angry, full of barely contained rage. I think we should leave, Robert. Clearly Mom has made up her mind to be completely selfish. Selfish. That word hit me like a physical slap across the face. After everything I'd given them, after every sacrifice I'd made, after every check I'd written, every bill I'd paid, I was selfish for wanting to protect my own future, my own survival. Fine, I said quietly, my voice barely above a whisper, go then. But understand this clearly. I love you all more than life itself, but I'm done being your personal ATM machine. You're adults now, you have jobs, homes, families of your own. It's time you learn to live within your own means." They left without saying goodbye, not a single word. James hung up the phone without even a farewell. I sat alone at that dinner table, looking at the food I'd spent hours preparing, the nice dishes I'd carefully set out, and I cried until there were no tears left in my body, until I was completely empty. That was a year ago now. In those first few weeks after the meeting, I convinced myself things would eventually blow over. They were angry, hurt, defensive. But they'd come around eventually. We were family after all. You don't just throw away family over money, over something so temporary. They'd cool down, reflect on things, and realize I was right. Maybe they'd even apologize. I was so incredibly naive. The phone call stopped completely, absolutely. Sarah, who used to call me 4 times a week just to chat, went completely silent. Robert, who'd stopped by every Sunday morning for coffee and conversation, never showed up again. James blocked me on every social media platform. When I tried calling them, the conversations were brief and ice cold. "Can't talk right now, Mom. Really swamped with work. The kids have activities. I'm in a meeting." Always an excuse, always a reason to get off the phone as quickly as possible. I wasn't invited to Robert's daughter's birthday party. That one absolutely broke me into pieces. Little Emma was turning 8, and she was my first granddaughter, my first grandchild. I'd been at every single one of her birthdays since the day she was born. I sent a gift anyway. A bicycle she'd mentioned wanting when I'd last seen her. It was never acknowledged. No thank you card, no phone call, nothing at all. Thanksgiving arrived and passed. I'd hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my house for 41 years straight. It was our tradition, our family ritual. I'd start preparing days in advance, cooking David's favorite recipes, making sure every detail was perfect, making sure everyone felt loved and welcome. This year, I waited for someone to mention plans. No one did, not a single word. I finally broke down and called Sarah, my hands shaking as I dialed. "Oh," she said, her voice completely flat and emotionless. "We're doing Thanksgiving at Robert's house this year. Didn't he tell you about it?" "No," I said, my throat so tight I could barely speak. "He didn't tell me." A pause, then. "Well, I'm sure it just slipped his mind. You know how busy he gets with work and everything. Am I invited?" I asked, absolutely hating how small and pathetic my voice sounded, how desperate. Another pause, much longer this time, stretching out unbearably. "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea right now. Things are still really tense between us all. Maybe we should all just have some space for a while." Space. They wanted space from me because I'd stopped funding their lifestyles, their luxuries, their endless wants. I spent Thanksgiving completely alone for the first time in my entire life, eating a simple sandwich and watching old movies on television, trying desperately not to think about my children and grandchildren all gathered together without me, laughing and eating and celebrating while I sat in silence. Christmas was somehow even worse, even more painful. I sent carefully chosen gifts for all 8 grandchildren, each one selected with love and wrapped beautifully. I included checks for my kids too. Smaller amounts than before, but still generous, still more than I should have given. I thought maybe this would open the door just a crack, show them I wasn't abandoning them completely, that I still cared. The gifts were never acknowledged, not one thank you, not one phone call, not even a text message. The checks were cashed within 48 hours, but the silence remained absolutely unbroken. I tried everything I could think of. I sent text messages that went unanswered. I left voicemails that were ignored completely. I even drove to Sarah's house one afternoon, and she answered the door but wouldn't let me inside, wouldn't even invite me in for a moment. "I'm really busy right now, Mom. Maybe call first next time before just showing up." Then she closed the door directly in my face. I stood on her porch where I'd stood hundreds of times before, where I'd always been welcomed with hugs and coffee and grandchildren running to greet me with joy. And standing there, rejected and alone, I realized something terrible, something that shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. They didn't love me, they loved my money. And now that the money had stopped flowing, their affection had vanished right along with it. I spent months drowning in a fog of grief so thick I could barely breathe through it. This wasn't like losing David, not at all. When David died, I was surrounded by love, by support, by people who genuinely cared about me and my well-being. This was completely different. This was being systematically erased from my own family's life. Deleted like I'd never mattered at all, like I'd never existed. The rejection was suffocating, crushing. My doctor prescribed antidepressants just so I could function. I stopped attending my weekly book club because people would ask about my grandchildren, and I couldn't bear to explain why I never saw them anymore, why they'd vanished from my life. I lost nearly 20 pounds without trying. Sleep became impossible, elusive. The house felt like a tomb filled with photographs of a family that no longer wanted me, that had discarded me completely. Then one day in April, 9 months after I'd cut off the money, I overheard something that changed absolutely everything, that shifted my entire perspective. I was at the supermarket, just doing my regular shopping, and I saw Robert's wife Linda in the next aisle over. I almost approached her, desperate for any connection to my family, any scrap of acknowledgement. But something made me hesitate, made me pause. She was on her phone and her voice carried clearly over the shelves. "I know, right?" she said, laughing. She actually thought we'd keep coming around after she cut us off. Like, hello? We have our own lives to worry about. A pause, then more laughter, cruel and dismissive. "Robert says we should just wait her out. She's old, she can't live forever. Eventually she'll die and we'll get the house anyway. Why waste our time and energy pretending to care about someone so selfish?" I stood frozen between shelves of canned vegetables, my shopping basket hanging from my arm, listening to my daughter-in-law laugh about waiting for my death. Not because she'd miss me, not because she loved me, because she wanted my house, my property, my assets. Something inside me cracked wide open in that moment. But it wasn't pain anymore, wasn't grief or sadness, it was clarity. Ice cold, crystal clear, absolute clarity. They were waiting for me to die so they could inherit my property. They'd already divided it up among themselves in their minds, probably arguing over who'd get what percentage, what share. I was nothing more than an obstacle standing between them and $750,000 in real estate. My death was a financial event they were anticipating, maybe even hoping for, wishing would come soon. I walked out of that grocery store leaving my shopping cart abandoned in the middle of the aisle. I sat in my car in the parking lot, and for the first time in months, I didn't cry, I didn't break down. Instead, I called Frank, my financial advisor, right then and there. "Frank," I said when he answered, "I need to talk to you about selling my house, immediately." "Helen, are you sure about this? That's an enormous decision. Maybe we should schedule a meeting and discuss." "I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life," I interrupted him, my voice steady and determined. "I want to sell it as quickly as possible, and I don't want my children to know about it until it's completely done, until it's too late for them to interfere." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, "Okay, let's set up a meeting as soon as possible. But Helen, what exactly are you planning to do with the proceeds?" What was I planning to do? I was planning to take back my life, to reclaim myself. I was planning to stop being a victim of their manipulation. I was planning to make absolutely certain that the people who'd treated me like a disposable ATM, who'd erased me from their lives, who were literally waiting for me to die, would inherit exactly what they deserved. Absolutely nothing. "I'm planning to disappear," I told him plainly, "and I need your help to make it happen." Frank and I met the very next day in his office downtown. I'd brought every financial document I could find. Every bank statement, every piece of paper related to my assets, everything. I laid them all out on his conference table like evidence in a criminal trial. "Walk me through this," I said, leaning forward. "If I sell the house, what am I looking at realistically?" Frank pulled up his calculator and started working through the numbers carefully. "The market's incredibly strong right now. Your house is in excellent condition in a very desirable neighborhood with good schools. We could list it for $800,000, maybe $825 if we're strategic about it. After real estate commissions and capital gains taxes, you'd walk away with approximately $650,000. $650,000. Combined with what remained of my savings and David's life insurance policy, I'd have close to $900,000 total. More than enough to start completely over somewhere new, somewhere they'd never find me." "How long would it take to sell in this market?" I asked. "In this market, if we price it right and stage it properly, maybe 30 to 40 to 5 days. Could be even faster with the right buyer." "I want to do it," I said with absolute certainty. "But Frank, I need this to be completely quiet, completely confidential. I don't want my children finding out until after the sale closes and the money is in my account." Frank leaned back in his chair, studying my face carefully. "Helen, I have to ask you this. Are you absolutely certain about this decision? Once you sell, there's no going back, no undoing it. Your children are going to be furious beyond measure. My children haven't spoken to me in 9 months, I said, surprised by how steady and calm my voice sounded. They've made it perfectly crystal clear that I only matter to them as a future inheritance, as money they're waiting to collect. Well, they can inherit the memories instead. The house is mine, legally and completely, and I'm selling it. We listed the house 3 weeks later. Frank connected me with a realtor he trusted implicitly, a sharp professional woman named Catherine who completely understood the need for absolute discretion. We priced it competitively, at $815,000. Catherine had professional photographers come and take stunning photos, staged everything beautifully with rented furniture and decorations, and within 4 days we had 7 offers, multiple people competing for it. I accepted an offer of $845,000 from a young couple, expecting their second child. The irony wasn't lost on me at all. I was selling the house where I'd raised my family to a couple just starting theirs, just beginning their journey. I genuinely hoped they'd fill it with more love and appreciation than mine had shown me. The closing was set for 50 days out. During those 50 days, I planned my escape with absolute military precision, like a covert operation. I researched cities I'd always wanted to visit but never had the chance. I looked at apartments and condos in places where the cost of living was significantly lower, where my money would stretch much further, where nobody knew me or my history or my pain. I settled on Savannah, Georgia. I'd visited there once with David almost 30 years ago and fallen completely in love with the historic architecture, the Spanish moss hanging from ancient oak trees, the slower pace of southern life. I found a gorgeous 2-bedroom condo in the historic district, with a small balcony overlooking a beautiful square for $295,000. I could buy it outright with cash, no mortgage, no debt, and still have more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life without worry. I started packing slowly, methodically, carefully. I sorted through 41 years of accumulated memories, deciding what to keep, what to donate to charity, what to simply throw away. Every photo album, every piece of furniture, every dish and decoration held a story, held memories. Some made me smile sadly. Most just made me ache inside. The absolute hardest part was dealing with the photographs. Boxes and boxes of photographs spanning 4 decades. Baby pictures, birthday parties, graduations, weddings, holidays. I'd been the family historian, carefully documenting every milestone, every holiday, every precious moment we'd shared together. I stared for a long time at a photo of 6-year-old Sarah on Christmas morning, her face absolutely glowing with pure joy as she opened presents under the tree. Where was that little girl now? What had happened to transform her into someone who could cut her mother out so completely, so cruelly? I packed exactly 1 photo album to take with me to my new life. Just 1. The rest I left in cardboard boxes in the basement for whoever bought the house to deal with. Let them wonder about the smiling family in the pictures. Let them imagine we were happy and whole. 4 weeks before closing, Sarah called me for the first time in 10 months. My heart actually leaped when I saw her name appear on my phone screen. Maybe she'd had a change of heart. Maybe she missed me. Maybe this nightmare was finally ending. Maybe we could rebuild. "Mom," she said, her voice bright and artificially cheerful. "I was thinking about you today. How have you been doing?" "I'm fine," I said cautiously, suspiciously. "How are you? How are the children?" "Oh, everyone's doing great, just wonderful." "Listen, Mom. I wanted to apologize. I really think we all overreacted about the whole money situation. Family is what truly matters, right? Not money, not material things." I almost laughed out loud at the staggering irony. "That's very mature of you, Sarah. I appreciate that. So I was thinking, why don't you come to dinner this Sunday evening? The whole family will be there. Robert, James, everyone. It's been way too long since we've all been together. The whole family." After 10 months of complete silence, of total rejection, suddenly they wanted to see me, wanted me at dinner. I knew exactly what this was about, could see right through it. Someone had driven past the house and seen the for sale sign in the yard, or maybe a neighbor had mentioned it to them. They'd found out I was selling and now they were panicking, scrambling to stop me. "That sounds lovely," I lied smoothly. "Sunday works perfectly for me. Great, wonderful. Come around 6 o'clock. And Mom? We really have missed you so much." "No, you haven't," I thought coldly. "You've missed your inheritance, your future windfall." I didn't go to dinner that Sunday. Instead, I sent a group text to all three of my children at exactly 5:30. Sorry, not feeling well today. Have to cancel. Hope you all enjoy your evening together. Then I turned off my phone completely. I imagined them sitting around Robert's dining room table, checking their watches anxiously, calling my number repeatedly and getting voicemail, growing increasingly frustrated. I imagined their panic, their anger, their desperate attempts to reach me. And I felt absolutely nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, not sadness. Just a strange, peaceful numbness like Novocaine for my emotions. The closing happened on a Wednesday morning in mid-June. I signed my name on document after document after document, my hand perfectly steady, no hesitation. Catherine presented me with a cashier's check for $798,000, after all fees, commissions, and closing costs. I stared at that check representing everything David and I had built together over 41 years of marriage, and I felt the crushing weight of my old life lifting off my shoulders, felt myself becoming lighter. The buyers seemed like genuinely good people, kind and excited. The wife was noticeably pregnant, glowing with happiness about their new home. The husband kept talking enthusiastically about the backyard, how perfect it would be for their children to play in, to grow up in. I wished them well and genuinely meant it, hoped they'd be happy there. I walked out of that attorney's office a completely free woman, unbound. That same afternoon I drove the 8 hours to Savannah and pulled up to my new condo. The moving company I'd hired had delivered my carefully selected belongings 2 days before. Not much really. A bedroom set, my favorite reading chair, some books, my clothes, and that one precious photo album. Everything else I'd either sold, donated to charity, or simply left behind. The condo was on the 4th floor with a small balcony overlooking a beautiful tree-filled square. It was a tiny fraction of the size of my old house, maybe a quarter of the space, and it was absolutely perfect. Clean, simple, unburdened by decades of memories of betrayal and disappointment. I stood on that balcony as the sun began to set, watching the light filter through the Spanish moss, and I breathed deeply for what felt like the first time in years, like I'd been holding my breath for months. I'd left a letter for my children at the old house, taped to the kitchen counter where I knew they'd eventually find it when they came looking. I'd spent hours and hours writing and rewriting it, trying to find words that would adequately express everything I felt, everything they'd destroyed. In the end, I kept it relatively simple and direct. Dear Robert, Sarah, and James, by the time you read this letter, I'll be gone, and the house will belong to someone else entirely, to a family that will hopefully appreciate it more than you appreciated me. I'm sure you're angry right now. I'm sure you feel betrayed, cheated. But I need you to understand something important. For the last 6 years you treated me like a bank account with a pulse, like an ATM that happened to be your mother. You took and took and took without ever giving anything back. And when I finally said no, when I finally set a boundary, you erased me from your lives completely. You stopped calling, stopped visiting, cut me out entirely. You made it crystal clear that I only mattered to you as a source of money and a future inheritance. I heard Linda on the phone in the supermarket talking about waiting for me to die so you could get this house. So I decided to make things easier for all of you. You don't have to wait anymore, don't have to pretend. I'm gone, and so is your inheritance. I hope the $280,000 I gave you over the years was worth losing your mother. I hope when you're my age, your own children treat you with more love and respect than you showed me. The house is sold, the money is mine, and I'm starting over somewhere you'll never find me. Don't bother looking, Helen. I'd made copies of that letter and mailed them to each of my children's home addresses, timed to arrive the day after closing. I wanted them to receive the news separately, in private, so they couldn't immediately join forces and strategize together. I wanted each of them to sit alone with what they'd lost, what they'd thrown away so carelessly, what their greed and selfishness had cost them. My phone, which I'd turned back on after arriving safely in Savannah, started ringing that very evening like an alarm that wouldn't stop. First Sarah, then Robert, then James. Over and over and over the calls came, relentless and desperate. I let every single one go directly to voicemail, didn't answer a single time. I listened to the messages once, just once. A parade of rage and disbelief and accusations, exactly what I'd expected. How could you do this to us? Sarah shrieked, her voice shrill and furious. This is basically theft, Mom. That house was our inheritance, our future. You had no right to sell it without consulting us first. Robert's voice was cold with barely controlled fury, icier than I'd ever heard it. You're going to regret this decision. Family doesn't treat family this way. Dad would be ashamed of you right now, absolutely ashamed. James sounded more hurt than angry initially, which almost made me laugh at the absurdity. Mom, how could you? We're your children. We love you. This is so cruel, so unnecessarily cruel. Family doesn't treat family this way, Robert had said. The irony was completely lost on him, sailed right over his head. I deleted every single message without responding and blocked all 3 of their numbers. I was done, completely finished. The first month in Savannah was strange, disorienting. I kept waiting for the guilt to hit me like a wave, for the regret to settle in my chest, for the maternal instinct to kick in and make me reach out to my children, to try to fix things. It never came, not once. Instead, what came was peace. Actual, genuine, deep peace that I hadn't felt in years, maybe decades. Peace like a warm blanket wrapping around me. I joined a book club at the beautiful public library downtown. I started taking watercolor painting classes at the Community Arts Center on Wednesday evenings. I volunteered at a women's shelter twice a week, helping other women who were rebuilding their lives after difficult circumstances, after trauma and loss. It felt meaningful, purposeful. I made friends, real, genuine friends who liked me for who I was, not for what I could give them, not for what I could provide. One of those friends was Dorothy, a 74-year-old retired teacher, who lived 3 doors down from me in the same building. Over coffee one morning about 3 months after my move, she asked me directly about my family. It was the first time anyone had asked so directly, so openly. I have 3 children, I said carefully, choosing my words. We're not in contact anymore. We're estranged. Dorothy nodded slowly, not pressing for details, not prying. Sometimes the people who should love us the most, who should protect us, are the ones who hurt us the worst, who wound us the deepest. Did you have children? I asked gently. 2 sons, Dorothy said, her voice soft with old pain. One died in a motorcycle accident when he was 25. That was 30 years ago now. The other, well, let's just say we had very different ideas about what family means, about loyalty and love. I haven't seen him or spoken to him in 12 years. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. The estrangement, the separation? Dorothy thought about this for a long moment, stirring her coffee slowly, carefully. I regret that he chose money and resentment over our relationship. I regret that he became someone I don't even recognize anymore, someone so different from the boy I raised. But do I regret protecting myself, setting boundaries, walking away from toxicity? No. Not even a little bit, not for 1 second. Helen, there comes a point in life where you have to choose between preserving your dignity or preserving a relationship that's already dead, that's already poisoned. You can't do both. You have to choose yourself. Her words settled something deep inside me that I hadn't even realized was still unsettled, still raw. About 4 months after I moved, I received a certified letter that required my signature. It was from an attorney representing all 3 of my children collectively. They were contesting the sale of the house, claiming I was mentally incompetent when I made the decision, that I'd been unduly influenced by my financial advisor, that as my children they had some kind of legal right to inherit the family home. I read the letter twice, slowly, then called my own lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Rebecca, who specialized in elder law and estate planning. She read through their claims carefully, and actually laughed out loud. Helen, this is complete nonsense legal garbage, she said confidently. You were evaluated by your primary care doctor as fully mentally competent just 2 months before the sale. You made a completely legal sale of property you owned outright, with no liens or claims against it. Your children have absolutely no legal standing whatsoever. This is nothing more than a desperate attempt at intimidation, at bullying you into submission. So what do? I asked, feeling anxious despite her confidence. Nothing at all. I'll respond to their attorney professionally, shut this down completely, and that'll be the end of it legally. Though I have to ask, do you want me to include a cease and desist order? Make it legally clear they're not to contact you further, that continued harassment will have legal consequences? I thought about my children, probably huddled together with their lawyer, convinced they could bully or manipulate or legally force me back into their lives, back into my role as their personal bank account, their source of endless funds. Yes, I said firmly, with absolute certainty. Make it very clear. I want no contact whatsoever. Rebecca drafted a response that left absolutely no room for interpretation or argument. My children had no claim whatsoever to my property, no right to my money, and no legal standing to question my choices or decisions. The cease and desist order was explicit and legally binding. The legal letter marked the definitive end of their attempts to reach me, to contact me. After Rebecca's response made it crystal clear they had no case, no grounds for legal action, the calls and emails stopped completely. It was like they'd finally accepted that I was serious, that I was really gone, that the money and property were truly beyond their reach forever. I'd be lying completely if I said it didn't hurt sometimes. These were my children, people I'd carried in my body, raised from infancy, loved with every fiber of my being. There were moments when I'd see a grandmother at the park playing with her grandchildren, and feel a sharp stabbing pain in my chest. There were holidays that felt somewhat empty despite my new friends and activities. There were nights when I lay awake in the darkness wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake, if I'd been too harsh. But then I'd remember Linda's voice at the grocery store, laughing casually about waiting for me to die. I'd remember the 10 months of complete silence, of total rejection, the casual cruelty of being treated like I didn't exist unless I was writing checks. I'd remember how small I'd felt, how worthless, how used, how disposable. And the pain would fade away, replaced by something much stronger and more important. Self-respect, dignity, self-worth. 7 months into my new life, I did something I'd never done before in my entire existence. I went on a trip by myself, completely alone, just because I wanted to, because it brought me joy. I spent 3 weeks in Santa Fe, New Mexico, wandering through incredible art galleries, eating at wonderful restaurants I'd never have tried before, staying in a charming bed and breakfast run by a lovely couple. I bought myself a beautiful turquoise and silver necklace that cost more than I'd ever spent on myself in my entire life. Every morning I woke up without that crushing anxiety, without the dread, without the heavy weight of other people's expectations and demands crushing me, suffocating me. I was free, truly, completely free. The money from the house sale combined with my remaining savings meant I could live comfortably for the rest of my life without worry, without fear. I could travel when I wanted to. I could take classes that interested me. I could donate to causes I believed in deeply. I could actually enjoy the life David and I had worked so incredibly hard to build, instead of watching it drain away into the bottomless pit of my children's entitlement and endless demands. I'm 72 now. My life in Savannah is quiet, peaceful, and entirely my own for the first time ever. I have friends who genuinely value me as a person. I have hobbies that fulfill me and bring me joy. I have a home that's truly mine, completely free of ghosts and expectations and bitter memories. Sometimes people I meet casually ask if I have children, and I say yes, but we're not close anymore. I don't elaborate beyond that. Their story isn't mine to tell anymore, isn't my burden to carry. Would I have chosen this path if my children had treated me differently, with love and respect? Of course not. Never. I would have given absolutely anything to have them in my life as real family, as people who loved me unconditionally, not as users and manipulators. But they made their choice clearly, and I made mine in response. They wanted an inheritance, a windfall. Instead, they got a lesson they'll carry for the rest of their lives, a lesson about consequences. You can't inherit from someone you've already lost, someone you've already thrown away. And they lost me long before I sold that house. They lost me the moment they decided I was worth more dead than alive, the moment I became nothing more than a future payday to them. One afternoon about a year after I'd moved, I was having lunch at a small cafe near my condo when I overheard a conversation at the next table. A woman around my age was talking to someone younger, maybe her daughter. "I just don't understand why you won't help me with the down payment," the younger woman was saying, her voice edged with frustration. "You have the money. Dad left you plenty. It's not like you need it all." The older woman's response was quiet but firm, and it made me pause with my coffee cup halfway to my lips. "Because you're 43 years old and perfectly capable of saving for your own down payment. Because every time I've helped you financially, you've come back asking for more. Because I love you, but I also need to protect my own future. Because saying yes to you means saying no to myself, to my security." The younger woman stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. "You're being selfish. Grandma would have helped me. She would have understood. Grandma also died broke and dependent on your grandfather's pension, because she gave everything away to family members who never appreciated it," the older woman said calmly. "I watched her struggle those last years, and I learned from her mistakes. I'm sorry you see it as selfish. I see it as survival. I wanted to stand up, walk over to that woman, and tell her she was doing the right thing, that she was protecting herself. I wanted to tell her I understood completely, that she wasn't alone. But I didn't. It wasn't my place, wasn't my story to insert myself into. Instead, I left a generous tip for the server, and walked back to my condo, thinking about cycles and patterns, about how history repeats itself when we don't learn from it. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, and I thought about my mother. She'd died when I was 35, long before David passed, before my children became adults. She'd been a giving person, always putting others first, always sacrificing her own needs for everyone else. I remembered visiting her in her small apartment those last years, how she'd struggled financially despite having worked her whole life. I remembered her saying once, almost casually, that she wished she'd been less generous with certain family members, that she wished she'd protected herself better. I wish I'd understood what she meant back then, really understood it. Maybe I could have learned the lesson earlier, before I nearly destroyed my own financial security. But I understood now, completely and thoroughly. I pulled out my phone and opened my Photos app, scrolling back through the years. There were photos from before: Christmases, birthdays, family gatherings, everyone smiling at the camera, looking happy and close. Looking at those photos now, I could see what I couldn't see then. In almost every photo, I was the one taking the picture, the one behind the camera. Or if I was in the photo, I was slightly apart from the group, slightly separate. I was always the one organizing, hosting, providing, giving, but never quite fully included, never quite fully valued. The signs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them, hadn't wanted to acknowledge what they meant. I deleted the photo app from my phone entirely. I didn't need those memories anymore, didn't want them taking up space in my life or my mind. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a walk through the historic district. As the sun was rising, the streets were quiet, peaceful. Spanish moss swayed gently in the morning breeze. The old buildings glowed golden in the early light. I passed a church and heard music coming from inside, someone practicing on the organ, filling the empty space with something beautiful. I stood outside for a moment, just listening. A woman about my age came out of the church and smiled at me warmly. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said, gesturing toward the music. "It really is," I agreed. "Are you new to the neighborhood? I haven't seen you before." "Relatively new, yes. I moved here about a year ago." "Welcome," she said genuinely. "I'm Patricia. If you ever need anything, or just want coffee and conversation, I live in the blue house on the corner there." "I'm Helen," I said, and shook her hand. "Thank you. That's very kind of you. We're all just trying to build community here, trying to look out for each other," she said with a warm smile. "That's what neighbors should do." As I walked back to my condo, I thought about the difference between that casual kindness from a stranger and the cold calculation I'd received from my own children. A stranger offering genuine connection, with no strings attached, no expectations, no hidden agenda. That's when I knew, absolutely and completely, that I'd made the right choice. About 18 months after I moved to Savannah, I received an unexpected email. It came to an old email address I rarely checked anymore, one I'd had for years but had mostly abandoned. The sender was Emma, Robert's daughter, my oldest granddaughter. She was 16 now, nearly an adult herself. "Dear Grandma Helen," the email began, and my hands started shaking just seeing those words. "I hope this email reaches you. I'm not sure if you still use this address, but it was the only one I could find in some old papers in the attic. Mom and Dad don't know I'm writing to you. They'd be furious if they found out. I don't really understand what happened between you and my parents and uncle and aunt. Nobody will talk about it directly. They just say you moved away and that you were selfish and cut them off. But I found some old letters and documents in the basement when I was looking for something else, and I don't think that's the whole story. I think there's a lot they're not telling me. I miss you, Grandma. I miss our Sunday morning pancakes and the way you'd let me help you garden, and how you always remembered exactly what books I was reading. I miss having someone who actually listened to me, instead of just lecturing me about grades and college applications. I'm not asking you to reconcile with my parents or anything like that. I'm sure you have your reasons for whatever happened. I just wanted you to know that I think about you, and I hope you're doing okay wherever you are. And maybe, if you want to, we could write to each other sometimes? Just us, privately? I love you, and I always will. Emma. I read that email 5 times, tears streaming down my face. My sweet Emma, my first grandchild, reaching out across the silence and distance. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to rebuild that connection, to have at least one relationship with my grandchildren. But another part of me, the part that had learned hard lessons about boundaries and self-protection, hesitated. What would responding mean? Would it open a door I'd deliberately closed? Would her parents eventually find out and use her as a way to manipulate me, to get access to me again? Would I be putting Emma in a difficult position, forcing her to choose sides or keep secrets? I sat with the email for 3 days, reading it repeatedly, thinking about what was best. Not just for me, but for Emma too. Finally, I wrote back. I kept it simple, honest, and clear about boundaries. Dear Emma, my precious girl, thank you so much for reaching out to me. You have no idea how much your email meant to me, how much it touched my heart to hear from you. You're right that there's a lot you don't know about what happened between me and your parents. That's a conversation you'll need to have with them when you're ready, when you're older. It's not my place to tell you their side of things or to put you in the middle of adult conflicts. What I can tell you is this. I made decisions I needed to make to protect myself and my future. Those decisions hurt your parents, and they're angry about it. That's understandable even if I don't regret what I did. I miss you too, sweetheart. I miss all of you grandchildren more than I can possibly express. But I also need to protect the peace I've found, the life I've built. Here's what I can offer you. When you turn 18, when you're legally an adult and can make your own decisions without your parents' permission or interference, I would love to reconnect with you properly. I would love to meet you for coffee, hear about your life, be part of your world again if you still want that. Until then, please know that I love you very much. I'm proud of you for being brave enough to reach out. And I hope you'll understand why I need to wait, why I need to protect both of us by maintaining this distance for just a little longer. Take care of yourself, Emma, study hard, be kind to yourself, and know that somewhere in Savannah, your grandmother thinks about you and wishes you nothing but happiness. All my love, Grandma Helen. I sent the email and then closed the account entirely. It was too painful to keep checking it, too tempting to hope for more messages. 2 years have passed since that email from Emma. She'd be 18 now, an adult. Sometimes I wonder if she'll reach out again, if she'll remember her promise to reconnect when she was older. Sometimes I hope she will, sometimes I hope she won't, that she'll build her own life free from all this family drama and pain. My life has settled into a comfortable rhythm now, a peaceful pattern. I volunteer at the women's shelter 4 days a week now, and I've become something of a mentor to younger women going through difficult divorces or family estrangements. I share my story carefully, selectively, and I watch as it gives them permission to protect themselves too, to set boundaries, to choose their own well-being. One woman, Maria, was 45 and struggling with guilt about limiting contact with her alcoholic mother who kept demanding money. We sat together in the shelter's small garden one afternoon, and she cried as she talked about feeling like a terrible daughter. "Let me ask you something," I said gently. "If your mother genuinely loved you, would she keep putting you in positions where you have to choose between your own family's financial security and her demands? Would she use your love as a weapon against you?" Maria looked up at me, tears on her cheeks. No, she wouldn't. Exactly. Real love doesn't manipulate. Real love doesn't exploit. Real love doesn't keep taking until there's nothing left. She nodded slowly, and I could see something shifting in her eyes, some burden lifting slightly. "That's what I've learned," I continued. "That's what it took me 70 years to understand. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and even for the other person, is to step back. To stop enabling, to stop being used. Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Cutting off your children?" Every single day, I answered honestly, and also not at all. Both things are true. I regret that they became people who could treat me that way. I regret that I enabled it for so long. I regret the loss of what could have been, what should have been. But I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret choosing my own dignity and peace. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. The grief and the relief. My health is good, thank God. I walk every day, eat well, stay active. My doctor says I'm in better shape now than I was 3 years ago when I was still trapped in that cycle of stress and anxiety and depression. I've traveled more in the past 2 years than I did in the previous 20. I've been to New Orleans, Charleston, the Florida Keys. I've taken cooking classes, learned basic Spanish, started a small garden on my balcony. I've lived, actually lived, instead of just existing as an ATM for other people's dreams. Sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder what my children tell people about me. Do they say I died? Do they say I abandoned them cruelly and without reason? Do they tell their friends and colleagues that their mother was selfish and heartless? Or do they avoid mentioning me at all, erasing me from their narrative entirely? I'll probably never know, and I've made peace with that uncertainty. Last week I was at the farmer's market buying fresh vegetables when I saw a woman who looked remarkably like Sarah might look now. A bit older, more lined around the eyes. My heart stopped for a moment, actually skipped a beat. But when she turned around fully, she was a complete stranger, someone I'd never seen before. The panic I felt in that moment surprised me. After all this time, after all this healing, some part of me still fears being found, being confronted, being pulled back into that toxic dynamic. Dorothy, my friend from down the hall, noticed my reaction. "You okay, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I thought I saw someone I knew, someone from my old life," I admitted. She squeezed my hand gently. "But you didn't, and even if you had, you're strong enough now to handle it. You're not that woman anymore, Helen. You're not the one who let people use her. You've become someone different, someone stronger." She was right, of course. I'm not that woman anymore. The one who said yes to everything, who sacrificed her own security for people who didn't appreciate it, who confused love with endless giving. I've learned that real love has boundaries. Real love is reciprocal. Real love doesn't demand that you destroy yourself to prove your devotion. Those are lessons I wish I'd learned earlier, when my children were young, when there might have been time to teach them different values. But I can't change the past, can't go back and parent them differently. All I can do is live the rest of my life with the wisdom I've gained, however late it came. Next month I'm planning a trip to Italy. I've always wanted to see Venice, to walk through Florence, to eat authentic pasta in small family restaurants. David and I always said we'd go someday, when we retired, when we had time. But someday never came for us, not together. I'm going now, for both of us. I'm going to live the life we planned, even if I'm living it alone. This morning, I was watering my balcony garden when I heard children laughing in the courtyard below. A young family, mother, father, 2 small children, were playing together, chasing each other around the fountain. The love was so evident, so genuine, so joyful. I felt a pang of sadness watching them, thinking about what I'd lost, what I'd missed with my own grandchildren. But then one of the children, a little girl maybe 5 years old, looked up and saw me on my balcony. She waved enthusiastically, her whole arm moving, her face bright with unself-conscious friendliness. I waved back, smiling. Her mother looked up too and smiled at me warmly. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" she called up. "Absolutely beautiful," I agreed. Such a simple exchange, such a small moment. But it reminded me that there's kindness in the world, connection that doesn't come with conditions or price tags. There are people who smile at strangers just because it feels good to spread joy. That's the world I'm choosing to live in now. Not the one where family uses family, where love is transactional, where your worth is measured by your bank account. But the one where kindness exists for its own sake, where friendships are built on genuine connection, where I'm valued for who I am rather than what I can provide. Sometimes I think about what I would say to my children if I saw them again, if they somehow found me, or if we ended up in the same place by chance. I've rehearsed conversations in my mind, imagined scenarios, prepared speeches. But honestly, I don't think I'd say much at all. What is there to say that hasn't already been said that wouldn't just reopen old wounds? Maybe I'd simply look at them and say, "I hope you've learned something from all of this. I hope you treat your own children better than you treated me. I hope someday you understand why I made the choices I made." Or maybe I wouldn't say anything at all. Maybe I'd just nod politely and walk away, protecting the peace I've worked so hard to build and maintain. The truth is, I don't owe them an explanation. I don't owe them my time or my energy or my emotional labor. I already gave them more than they deserved, more than they appreciated, more than they valued. What I owe myself now is peace, joy, the chance to live whatever years I have left on my own terms, surrounded by people who genuinely care about me, doing things that bring me fulfillment and happiness. That's not selfish. That's survival. That's choosing life over slow emotional death. This afternoon, I'm meeting Dorothy and some other friends for lunch at a little cafe we love. We'll talk and laugh and share stories. Nobody will ask me for money. Nobody will make me feel guilty for existing. Nobody will use my love as a weapon against me. Tonight, I'll come home to my small perfect condo. I'll make myself a nice dinner. I'll read my book on the balcony as the sun sets. I'll go to bed without anxiety, without dread, without fear. Tomorrow, I'll wake up and do it all again, living my life, on my terms, for myself. This is my story. This is how I disappeared from a family that only wanted me for my money and reappeared in a life that's entirely, completely, beautifully my own. I don't know how many years I have left. Maybe 10, maybe 20 if I'm lucky. But however many years I get, they're mine now. They belong to me, to my choices, to my peace and happiness. And that's all the justice I ever needed. The justice of reclaiming my own life, my own worth, my own future. The house they were waiting to inherit is gone. The money they were counting on is beyond their reach. But I'm still here, still living, still finding joy in small moments and genuine connections. I disappeared just like I said I would. And I've never been happier, never been more at peace, never been more completely and authentically myself. This is my life now. It belongs to nobody but me. And that, finally, is enough.